When reviewing the record of the Biden administration on foreign policy, let's just review for 1 second where foreign policy was when Joe Biden took office. So there was no open war with Russia, for example. There was no open conflict with China. There was a crackdown on China that was happening. There was a move towards strengthening sanctions against Russia that had been happening and stronger movement on Russia's borders by the Trump administration. In the Middle East, peace had broken out. And the simple fact of the matter is that foreign policy might have been the brightest spot of the Trump administration. And Joe Biden has signally capitulated on a variety of issues, and he's created tremendous lack of clarity on others. And that lack of clarity leads to further conflict. And one of the key tenets of foreign policy is that lack of clarity leads to miscommunication. Miscommunication leads to people making bad assumptions. Those bad assumptions lead to actual dead people. This has been the history of foreign policy ranging well back before World War I. And yet the Biden administration, where it's not wrong, it is unclear. And that is a serious, serious problem. And it's true country to country. And so we've seen over the past few months an attempt by Joe Biden to prop up his foreign policy as sort of a key component of a successful administration. And yet I failed to see the success. So the most obvious example is that last week, Joe Biden was out there and he was championing the idea that he had done a wonderful job in Afghanistan based on the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri. Okay, so the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was the person in charge of al-Qaeda, this was a big win for Joe Biden. According to the media, according to the press, it was going to revitalize his hopes at a 2024 run, revitalize Democratic hopes in 2022. There's only one problem, which is that Zawahiri was killed in the middle of Kabul. Here was Joe Biden championing all of the killing of al-Zawahiri last week.
On Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan, that killed the emir of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. Now, justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more. People around the world no longer need to fear the vicious and determined killer. The United States continues to demonstrate our resolve and our capacity to defend the American people against those who seek to do us harm.
Okay, well, all of that sounds very nice, except for the fact that he surrendered the entire country to people like Ayman al-Zawahiri, which is why Zawahiri was sitting, in the middle of Kabul. And to understand how badly Biden screwed up Afghanistan, you have to understand that he's been wrong about pretty much every foreign policy issue of our lifetime. Joe Biden doesn't actually have any ideas of his own. The ideas that he has are just incorrect. Very often what Joe Biden does, he just follows the center of the Democratic Party. And so if the center of the Democratic Party is pro-Afghan war, he's very pro-Afghan war. If it becomes anti-Afghan war, he becomes very anti-Afghan war. And then he becomes very set in his own bad ideas, and the result is disaster. There's a reason why Joe Biden's approval rating tanked from like 50% down into the 30s during the Afghanistan debacle in 2021 and has not picked up yet, because it underscores the incompetence of this human being. So to understand Joe Biden on Afghanistan, you really have to go all the way back to like the initiation of the war in Afghanistan in the aftermath of September 11th. So Joe Biden was full scale on board with the war in Afghanistan. So was pretty much everybody. There was pretty much nobody in Congress who was not on board with the war in Afghanistan. Here was Biden circa September 14th, 2001.
If it requires the use of ground forces, I have no doubt you'll get support to do it. I'm not confirming this. Let's assume it turns out to be bin Laden and his organization. Any cell, any group, anything it takes, including using ground forces.
Okay, so it's all about bin Laden and his organization, whatever we have to do. Okay, and then the next month he says, we can't just go in there and then break a few things and leave. We have to be there for the long haul. Again, this was the typical Democratic Party position circa 2001.
The President has personally stated it to Senator Helms and to me, and I'm sure to others, that we have to be in this for the long haul. We can't, quote, drain the swamp and let it fill up again.
Okay, February 2002, same message, right? History is going to judge us. If we don't stay the course, we have to be there long haul.
The first real test of post-9/11 engagement is whether or not we're going to stay the course in Afghanistan. If Chairman Karzai is to govern effectively, the first thing he needs is security. The second is a plan which is underway to rebuild a military and a police force and an infusion of economic assistance just to do the basic things, like put in fax machines, telephones, desk, paper, the things that are the necessary tools of governance in the most basic of ways. History is going to judge us very harshly, I believe, if we allow the hope of a liberated Afghanistan to evaporate because we are fearful of the phrase nation building, or we do not stay the course.
I mean, that's an amazing statement by Joe Biden circa February 2002. History is going to judge us harshly if we are against nation building. Okay, well, as we will see, that opinion has changed rather radically over time. So you fast forward about 6 years, and now the pitch from the Democratic Party is that the bad war is the war in Iraq and the good war is the war in Afghanistan, right? This is what is being pitched by, for example, the presidential candidate Barack Obama. Joe Biden has followed along in those footsteps, and so he makes that point in debate in October 2008. We're bogged down in Iraq. We need to do more in Afghanistan.
It's not a surprise at all that we have been significantly limited in our ability to deal with worldwide terror because we are tied down, bogged down in Iraq.
Afghanistan is slipping toward failure because it has never been a priority, and it has to become one.
We spend more money in 3 weeks on combat in Iraq than we spent on the entirety of the last 7 years that we have been in Afghanistan building that country.
Okay, so that was the good war, right? Iraq was the bad war. Afghanistan was the good war. Then Obama takes office, and he continues with this line, right? Joe Biden starts talking about what exactly is our goal in Afghanistan? What are we doing there?
After my trip, President Obama ordered a comprehensive review of the policy toward Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we want to make sure that our goals are clear and achievable, because I would respectfully suggest none of you nor us could say precisely what our goal is in Afghanistan. What is the goal?
Right, so now we shifted from nation building is worthwhile, and we should actually make sure that this is not a terrorist safe haven. We should liberalize Afghanistan too. We don't know our goal. In February 2011, moving forward a couple of years, Joe Biden says, we're definitely not going to leave, and we're just going to leave them in the lurch. We wouldn't do that sort of thing.
Let me say it plainly, Mr. President. It is not our intention to govern or to nation build, but we are not leaving if you don't want us to leave.
We're not leaving, but we're not here for the nation building. Right? So it's a pretty significant shift. And then by 2012, he's like, yeah, we're leaving. Sorry, we're out. Again, Joe Biden, nothing if not dull-witted. Here he is in 2012.
With 49 of our allies in Afghanistan, we've agreed on a gradual drawdown, so we're out of there by the year 2014. My friend and the governor say it's based on conditions, which means it depends. It does not depend for us. It is the responsibility of the Afghans to take care of their own security. But we are leaving. We are leaving in 2014, period.
Okay, so we did, in fact, pull out virtually all of our ground troops in 2014, and we were experiencing very few casualties. The Afghans were experiencing enormous casualties. We were experiencing very few casualties. And this maintained Joe Biden's line up until basically the pullout from Afghanistan. We are going to leave. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. We're going to leave. So April 14th, 2021, fast forward to Joe Biden's actual presidency. He says, we went there to root out al-Qaeda, and we accomplished that, and now it's time to come home.
We went to Afghanistan in 2001 to root out al-Qaeda, to prevent future terrorist attacks against the United States planned from Afghanistan. Our objective was clear. The cause was just. Our NATO allies and partners rallied beside us. And I supported that military action along with overwhelming majority of the members of Congress.
Okay, so again, we have now shifted all the way from we have to stay there, stay the course. If we have to nation build, we have to nation build too. We need to get the hell out, even though there are no American troops dying there right now. It's time to come home, and we rooted out al-Qaeda. And he continued to maintain this. In July of 2021, July 8th, he said al-Qaeda had been routed from Afghanistan. He said the Afghanistan military would not collapse. There would not be helicopters taking off from roofs of U.S. embassies. None of that was true.
We went for 2 reasons. One, to bring Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell, as I said at the time. The second reason was to eliminate al-Qaeda's capacity to deal with more attacks in the United States from that territory. We accomplished both of those objectives, period.
Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true.
Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not?
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. Okay, and then by August, of course, there had been a massive terror attack against American troops. The entire country had collapsed to the Taliban, and Joe Biden was forced to stagger to the microphone, announcing a terrorist attack, killing 13 American service people, led by ISIS-K, possibly with the cooperation of the very people that Joe Biden was basically handing over Kabul to.
A tough day. This evening in Kabul, as you all know, terrorists attacked that we've been talking about and worried about, that the intelligence community has assessed, has undertaken an attack by a group known as ISIS-K. Took the lives of American service members standing guard at the airport and wounded several others seriously.
This is what a failed foreign policy looks like. And then to sort of backfill the failure, on October 7th, Biden announced that the drawdown was complete. There were hundreds of American citizens who were left behind enemy lines at a minimum, tens of thousands of U.S. green card holders, people who had worked with the American military. Those people were left to the predations of the Taliban. And he said, don't worry, we're redirecting our competition to Russia and China. Okay, well, as it turns out, his policy with regard to Russia and China hasn't been a whole hell of a lot better than it was in Afghanistan. Here was Joe Biden signifying the end of American operations in Afghanistan.
My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. The world is changing. We're engaged in a serious competition with China. We're dealing with the challenges on multiple fronts with Russia. We're confronted with cyber attacks and nuclear proliferation.
So the idea was we now have to refocus. It was we have to focus in Afghanistan. Then Afghanistan was being distracted from by Iraq. Now Afghanistan was the distraction, so we have to surrender the entire country. The predictable result of this is that people thought that America was a weak tiger it was a paper tiger under President Biden. Who's got two thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?